I'm Jon Espino with the Young Folks, and I'm here today to interview writer-director Trey Edward Shults for his upcoming film, It Comes at Night. Obviously, I love the film.
Yay!
Especially since I was a huge fan of Krisha.
Yes.
And there are some elements, even though I know Krisha wasn't specifically
Yes.
a horror film, but it had a lot of the elements.
Totally.
And now that you've actually done a horror film, the elements are like 10 times stronger.
I love that.
But Krisha was a deeply personal film for you,
Yes.
kind of about and with your family.
Yes.
Is there any personal connection to It Comes at Night?
Oh, totally. I've said it before, but like the movie, all the core of it stems from losing my dad, and we had a messed up relationship, and he suffered with, or he battled, addiction for a long time, and a lot of that leaked over into Krisha. Then for this, it was like I hadn't seen my dad in 10 years, and he got pancreatic cancer, and that's fast. It moves fast, and I was with him on his deathbed. It was the closest I've come to death, and he felt so much regret for his life. So there was that whole experience, and then 2 months later, I just started writing, and this is what came out. And it started with that opening scene, and what Sarah says to her dad is what I said to mine. And then everything else stemmed out, and I think, but even past that stuff, there's so much, just like the house is very much the house, sort of my childhood house, which was my grandparents' house, this ranch in Texas called Pewee Acres, all the way to like the relationship between Paul and Travis in the movie. Like Paul is so much of like my two dads put together, and I'm a lot of Travis, and yeah, it's very personal, obviously not literally.
The thing I loved about the story, now that I know more about the personal insight, is also kind of how open-ended it is.
Yes.
It's, anything can happen at any time,
Totally.
and we have no idea as the audience. It's like, is something going to come out, scare us? Are there creatures? Is it all psychological?
Totally.
So did you have the ending in mind when you were writing it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was like trying to think how not to spoil stuff, but like I think the climax and what it leads to is that moment in the woods with the two families and what happens. To me, it's really devastating, but like it was always led to that, and then after that, I've had a couple different iterations, even in script form, of like what I've always sort of considered the epilogue, and like how I close things out after that, in the balance of that I played with for a while. So yeah, it was like the little epilogue at the end I played with totally different variations and everything, but to me the big climax ending was always that from the start, and always had to end that way.
Including the last shot?
Well, the last shot, actually really interesting. For a while, that was not the last shot. That became the last shot before we started shooting, like a month or so in production. And it was actually, I got the idea because of Joel. And Joel was like, I wonder what, like, after what would it be like just trying to have a meal as a family after what they've done? And I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. But the particular way this goes about, I don't know if they'd really be sitting around for having meals and everything. Mm-hmm. But the idea that came, the image that spoke to me was that last shot, and who's not around for that last shot, and what that means, and echoing where we were prior in the story. And that became really exciting. And so that came to me like a couple of months before shooting, and then it stuck through to now.
So there's sound design is really important in your film, especially with the way you played with silence, the way you played with just loud noises, sometimes atonal.
Totally.
So what was your process for deciding what to use when?
Well, it was I don't know. It was one step at a time, and it was, I think a lot of it was like, how much can we strip out, and how subtle can we be at times, and how much can we grasp to hear at times, but then how hard can we hit when we hit. And that was really exciting. And then past that, it was fun to just figure out a subtle shift between nightmares and reality, and give you we do it also with the music and the lenses we use and aspect ratio and stuff, but that leaked over to sound design as well, and to have that slightly off feeling. And I think a lot of it though was was subtlety and knowing how to use that subtlety at moments and then not be subtle at all at certain moments to where you feel those moments and they echo. That was sort of the approach.
So those were nightmares then?
Sure.
Because the narrator is pretty unreliable.
Totally. He's
kind of also in Krisha, the narrator is very unreliable.
Totally.
You don't know whether to trust them.
Exactly. And you're experiencing it just through their eyes. So who knows if that's 100% the way things are. But yeah, and it would be, the horror, it would be like either a subtle nightmare where something's slightly off and it just kind of feels wrong, to where like a hit moment that I hope is very scary, to like gunshots in reality. I was so obsessed with the gunshots in the movie, and there's not that many, but when they're there, I want you to
feel them.
Yes,
they stick around. They echo.
That's what I want, man. And I want them to linger, and I want them to scare you. Just the sound of a rifle going off in the woods, even the fire, and like feeling the fire pit, and feeling like the low end and the shake in it, and like we're looking into this hell, and experience it like it feels for Travis. It was really important.
So what drew you to the forest, to have this set in the forest?
That's a good question. I don't know. It was always like, even though it comes from my dad's death and everything, it was like I had to have these images in my head that I didn't know what they were for, and it was always this house with boarded up windows surrounded by woods, and I never wanted to leave it that much, and I wanted to contain it to that house, and that excited me. Just the idea of this middle of nowhere, and like I don't know. Yeah, I think another part of it is growing up at my grandparents' house around those woods, and that isolation, and just sort of too how like whether it's the woods at nights or woods during the day, like it can play tricks on you, and you can see things that you think you see or hear things that you don't, and it can really creep you out, and I just thought that combined with this house and restraining these characters to that environment was great for what this movie is getting at, if that makes sense.
I'm glad you said that, because when you held the shots looking into the forest, slightly zooming in.
Yeah.
I was looking for something.
Oh, I love it.
I didn't know what I was looking for, but at the same time, my mind played tricks on me.
Yep.
I saw stuff, so I guess it's really effective because you basically project your own fears.
Yeah.
You see, monsters that
Totally.
are probably all internalized or something.
Well, that's what I do. That's what I do in the wood, even during the day. There's a funny shot in the movie that it wasn't intentional, but there's like, I'm not gonna say what, but there's a moment in the woods where it's like, wait, is that no, that's not a person. Is that a person? And it's like the way the logs are and stuff.
Oh, is it when it's like driving by?
Yes.
Yeah. I knew exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, cool.
I'm like,
great.
Wait, is that? Like, I guess maybe we'll find out later. Or we won't.
I mean, it's so, or we won't. Exactly. But that's how my mind works, and it goes from that all the way to also just like darkness and like what you can't see. Can you see that? And like that stuff creeps me out.
So every element in the film was really thought out in sound design, and I want to talk about the importance of all the Renaissance art in the cabin.
Sure.
Especially, most notably, Bruegel's The Triumph of Death.
Yes. Well, that painting in particular, that was like one of my inspirations for the movie, looking at that painting.
That's kind of what because if you know the painting, it's it just shows, death, how it comes for all of us, rich, poor,
exactly,
healthy, sick, it all comes for us in the end.
Exactly. And it speaks to what the movie's about and everything else, and it's like, but it's interesting because that came from a personal place, in that my grandparents' house, my grandfather had Bruegel paintings hung around. He didn't have Triumph of Death, but he had Hunters in the Snow and another one I forget the name of. Yeah,
the Hunters in the Snow is, it fits the cabin, but this one
totally.
seemed a little like...
This is like, Triumph of Death is so I saw that painting and it just spoke to me. And then I found out about it, and apparently he painted it around the time of Black Death and the bubonic plague and everything, and these skeletons literally, obviously representing death and how it spread like that, and it just, what I mean, it just spoke so much to the movie. And past that, I love the idea of like sort of the house having this timeless quality, like these characters stuck in this timelessness, and almost also questioning whose house exactly it is, and what these things are. I don't know. There's a reason behind all of it, but a lot of it stems from just like that house I grew up in, and really thinking about that, and my grandfather surviving World War II, being a prisoner of war, and the stuff he had on his walls and everything.
Yeah, I mean, even though there are no overt monsters in the
Yes.
in the film, humans can still kind of be monsters.
Sure.
themselves.
Sure.
So how did you go about portraying the characters?
I don't know. I just know, I love movies about characters, and I love people, and I love characters and all that. And, that's what from the start always fascinated me, and that's what stuck through to the final thing. And even, horror movies I love, whether it's like Night of the Living Dead or The Thing or The Shining or whatever, it's like I always love what the horror or the thing does to the people, and that scares me even more. In The Thing, it was like the monster wasn't the scariest thing to me. It was like the paranoia and fear it instills in everyone, and how it fucks them up and tears them apart. And then same to whatever, like Night of the Living Dead, it was like I personally care way less about the zombies, but I care about what it does to people inside that house. So it was like that, and like kind of stuff I loved about horror movies combined with like a family drama and characters I thought were interesting. And
I wrote that down in my notes yesterday. It seemed like you had some influences, especially from Romero and Carpenter. Were they kind of inspirations?
Totally. And I grew up on their movies and loved their stuff, and I think it was that stuff I loved, and especially stuff in childhood with other stuff I love now as well, and almost like chamber dramas and like a Cassavetes film or whatever else, and like merging all that together was always really fun and interesting to me.
Yeah, those films, especially the great ones, they rely on like controlled performances.
Totally.
So how did your cast come together?
Oh, it was amazing. Well, it was like very intentional that my family will not be in this movie.
See, I was hoping for some kind of cameo or something.
There's a picture in the whiskey scene with Chris and Joel, where there's a picture. It's actually myself, my mom, and Krisha, but you see it for like a split second. But yeah, I know. Also, aside from the fact there's just no roles for them in this, but it was like a personal thing. Like, I need to challenge myself and get all professional actors and do that. But it started with Joel, and it stemmed from there. Like, after Joel was in, it was fast, and it all came together very intuitively and as it was meant to be. And it was different situations for certain things, but for every person, it really boiled down to like me being a fan of their work and thinking they're super talented, to meeting them and believing they're a good human and loving their energy and thinking we could do something special together. And that's how it all kind of stemmed from and came together.
I know I love the movie because it doesn't actually feed you all the information.
Totally.
It kind of respects our intelligence and lets us draw our own conclusions. But I can see audience members possibly being frustrated over it. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yes, I do.
Yeah?
Well, I do, just because I've been able to be around a couple of screenings and hear stuff, and it's like, yes, certainly. I'll say when I was making it, I did like, to me it all makes sense and it's all there for a specific reason, so it's like to me it's not frustrating. But now when I'm outside of it and seeing it, it's like, yes, I think it's gonna be frustrating. But I would encourage those people to think that, that's intentional. Maybe there's a reason that's intentional, and think about that, and maybe see the movie with a fresh pair of eyes again if they're inclined or interested.
It's a great frustration though.
I hope
totally
so.
Worth it.
Okay.
So any
I'm sure
upcoming projects we should look forward to? Horror maybe?
Probably not horror. At least not like, I love horror movies.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm gonna make a lot more of that. But next and right now, I just don't want to do that because I want to challenge myself and keep doing different stuff. And there's a really personal thing that I'm trying to write right now. That's like some elements of Krisha, some elements of this, but also totally new, and it's like kids in high school.
So a musical.
Yeah, honestly, the funny thing, I think this is my version of a High School Musical.
Really?
But it's not a musical, but it is. Like, music is so important to the entire flow of the movie and how it feels, like a Boogie Nights or Goodfellas or Dazed and Confused or something, to where, you know, they like live on music. And or even like American Honey, that's like her version of a musical, which is really interesting. So I would say it is my version of that. Music's gonna be huge to it, but there's no actual breaking into song.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Now don't forget to check out It Comes at Night in theaters Friday, June 9th.